What's up, everybody? Astrocatical here. Welcome to the Astrocastrophe, and today we are going to be talking about the lawsuit filed by Sydney Watson against Elijah Schaffer of The Blaze. So yeah, the thing with Elijah Schaffer and my opinion on it, I'm not the type of person who caters to the left when it comes to the whole sort of woke, blue-haired, sort of misandric side of things, where it's just like, oh, this person hates women because they sit down with their legs open and they talk about how women should be in the kitchen and not out there fulfilling some sort of career. I mean, I can see points to it to where it's just like, yeah, guys can absolutely be hyper masculine, and it comes off in a sort of overwhelming way that, puts off women, understandably, yes. But when it comes to situations where we have with Sydney Watson and Elijah Schaffer, this, in my mind, absolutely yes, this constitutes the suit she is filing against The Blaze, and it is for their negligence to act upon it. And from what I understand, she was fired for this, and that is retaliation. And according to whatever state she is in, the laws pertinent to retaliation against an employee from an employer, they vary, but they're all generally the same thing, and this is a hard-hitting knockout. I think Glenn Beck is going to end up paying a settlement to Sydney Watson, and I think it is absolutely justified. A lot of people are split on this because they are either friends with Elijah Schaffer or they are fans of conservatism, and they read the lawsuit and they hear words like misogynistic, anti-Semitism, and they write it off immediately because these are buzzwords that are meant to generate a sort of response out of people. And I understand Sydney is a little bit on the feminist side, and I mean, you really shouldn't even have her on your program in the first place. I guess she is a little bit more right-leaning, but there are some elements to her that are very leftist. She's obviously a feminist. She does not believe in Christianity. Elijah Schaffer apparently is this Christian devout sort of Catholic guy who is married, who also has been accused of cheating on his wife, which is not illegal. But if this is brought into the court, they are going to use this as evidence of him being the sort of lewd person who is unfaithful to his wife and would absolutely do something like this. I think it's going to end with Sydney getting some sort of settlement. I also understand Elijah Schaffer was fired for drunkenly groping another coworker of his, and he had signed an NDA order, meaning he can't talk about this. And I mean, all of this lines up to being like, yeah, Elijah Schaffer was more than likely doing these things. I hear that, people are either like, he's the sweetest, nicest guy in the world, or like, no, he's the most terrible person. And typically this is something I've noticed with a lot of people, especially in Hollywood, who have been doing these sorts of things. It's not the people that you're a little bit skeptical about. I'm talking about, it's like people like Harvey Weinstein, they did this shit. It's always, oh, they're the sweetest, nicest person I have ever met. They would never do this sort of thing. It's always those type of people because they want to portray themselves as that, so people don't buy it, so people don't believe that they actually are doing these things. And I can absolutely see that with Elijah Schaffer. I've seen videos of him. He is a little psychotic. I mean, we all are a little psychotic, but he is a little psychotic from my observational stance of things. I absolutely think, yeah, he probably did these things. I'm probably going to take a lot of flack for this because there's a lot of far-leaning right conservative folk out there who think that just even questioning that a woman could be sexually harassed at her job is me being like some sort of fucking left-leaning snowflake. No, I absolutely not. There's something wrong with conservatives, I think, where it's, like, the last thing they want to do is cheat on their wife. That is like the biggest sort of sanctimonious thing they can ever fucking do. But sexually harassing a woman, it's no big fucking deal. This, that, cat in the fucking hat. Anyways, I got a article here that I'm going to read, and I mean, it's a bit telling. Elijah Schaffer apparently was getting drunk and talking about dicks nonstop, and it made Sydney Watson uncomfortable. But let's just read this article from the Daily Beast. I'm not a big fan of the Daily Beast, but this was the closest one I could find. A year ago, Sydney Watson was poised to be the new star in the heady world of right-wing media. She was a few months into co-hosting a show on Glenn Beck's The Blaze, an online video network and launching pad for big conservative personalities like Tomi Lahren and Dana Loesch. I hope I said that last name right. Watson had signed a multi-year deal with The Blaze Media that she claims is worth $1.3 million. And that's, yeah, I didn't think she would be making that much money, but quite a bit. But Watson had a problem. Her co-host, pugnacious Blaze pundit Elijah Schaffer. Watson thought Schaffer was setting her up to fail, insisting on grossly misogynistic guests and even joking on Twitter about how he wanted her to sleep with talk radio host Sebastian Gorka. Yeah, okay. According to Watson, Schaffer was often drunk on set, slugging shots of liquor around recording time. Schaffer was obsessed with talking about sex, often specifically gay sex. In Watson's account, he would talk about it frequently around her and their guests. I mean, I understand she's a woman and he's not, talking about other women. I mean, if this is someone that, you work that closely with and there's, no attraction there, you're completely professional about the whole thing, and it gets to the point to where this person is becoming something of a hostile person, making a hostile environment, you're not going to want to hear any of these things, period, whether you like them or not. This is someone that you're being paid to work with, and putting up with something like this absolutely is something that can bring you down and make you want to file this sort of complaint, because it sounds like it was obnoxious. It sounds like it was very hostile, that it was going on 24/7 around the clock. He was getting drunk on set. And of course, The Blaze is going to ignore it because he is their star of the show. It's Elijah Schaffer. Anyways, after a few months of complaints from Watson, Blaze CEO Tyler Cardon allegedly came to her with a gripe of his own. Could she convince Schaffer to cut down on all the penis talk? Okay. As Watson put in, Cardon asked her to get Schaffer to stop talking about dicks so much. Okay, so yeah, this is, a Christian conservative who is married, and for the life of him, he cannot stop talking to Sydney Watson about dicks. So it sort of seems in my mind that maybe he's trying to plant some subconscious seeds into Watson's head, and maybe that's why she's putting this in the suit that she's filing against The Blaze. Schaffer would never listen to a woman. In a lawsuit filed Wednesday against The Blaze, Watson says her career was derailed after Blaze media management ignored her warnings about Schaffer's sexual harassment. The lawsuit portrays Watson as a woman struggling to make her own way in a conservative media company where concerns about harassment were ignored. And that's a pretty big deal. That will fall under negligence. There's a lot that goes into this. I think I said earlier, it really depends on which state this is in. I think it's Texas. So, there's going to be laws that are a little bit more pertinent to the suit, or some a little bit more lenient, but I think for the most part each state is pretty much the same. They are very strict on these sorts of things. It happens a lot in companies, and the thing about it is, once a woman files this suit, the bad part about it is she might have trouble finding work anywhere else, because who's going to hire her when she sued her former employer? Because I think Glenn Beck is ultimately going to end up paying at least over $1 million settlement to her. And any other company who finds out about that is not going to want to hire her. So it's probably, why she's, working with people like Jeremy in the quartering, because, he's someone who, wouldn't, I think Jeremy is, one of the nicest people out there, and he's not going to gloss over this and act like, oh, she might sue me for this. No, I think he's more reasonable, understanding. But yeah, she's going to have trouble finding work. It's really sad too. Schaffer was ultimately fired from The Blaze in September after allegedly drunkenly assaulting another Blaze media host by groping her breast during a movie premiere. At the time, The Blaze tweeted he had been fired for violating company policies and standards. And this is something Schaffer absolutely will not talk about, because he signed an NDA order about it. I understand. That means you have to shut up about it. You cannot say a single thing about it. And there could be money involved with this. He could potentially be sued for talking about this, which is understandable, but he's not going to talk about this. And I think this all points to the same thing. If they made him sign an NDA, and people are saying he got fired for, drinking and groping someone. I mean, this all points in the same direction. I think Sydney absolutely has a case against him. I mean, there's a lot here that people are vouching for. But Watson claims in her lawsuit that executives at the Blaze knew that Schaffer's problems with female employees went far back earlier. So that's the other thing, is she has people who can vouch for this, and that strengthens the case. Absolutely, because if you have other people who can vouch for it, then you have a stronger suit against the the plaintiff, or am I got it wrong? Anyways, the Blaze management was fully aware that they had a problem with Mr. Schaffer, but he was their star. The lawsuit reads he was abusive and sexist towards other women at the Blaze as well. As for comment, Watson's attorney Kurt Schittler, a conservative media personality in his own right, referred the Daily Beast complaint. The Blaze and Schaffer didn't respond to requests for comment. Schaffer made his name on the right, covering protests and riot in 2020. Starting in September 2021, Watson and Schaffer co-hosted a talk show for the Blaze called You Are Here from the Blaze's Texas studio. So yeah, this did take place in Texas. Once Schaffer received his co-hosting spot at the Blaze, according to Watson, he insisted on inviting guests like grossly misogynistic white nationalist leader Nick Fuentes. In her account, Watson found herself set up as Schaffer's foil, embarrassed by her co-host, and tricked into reading anti-Semitic messages from Schaffer's far-right fans aloud on the show. Now, I don't know the full and entire context of that. I can absolutely see that happening with Nick Fuentes on the show, and Nick Fuentes feeding off of what Schaffer is saying. Yeah, I can absolutely see that. But it became a running gag for Mr. Schaffer and his audience that some of Mr. Schaffer's fans would leave super chat comments with coded dog whistles that reference grossly misogynistic or anti-Semitic comics from Ms. Watson's to read, with her knowing what they meant, the complaint reads. Watson's problems with Schaffer escalated in December 2021 when the pair interviewed Jack Murphy, then a sort of would-be guru in the hypermasculine manosphere. Shortly before the interview, though, Murphy had been exposed by online critics for his involvements in the unusual sexual practices and his own past adult performances on webcams. So this was when Jack Murphy really made a name for himself and told Sydney Watson to fuck off because she read a super chat. So this thing with the super chats that she's reading to people is absolutely something I can line up with, because this is an example of it. So getting her to read anti-Semitic things, Nick Fuentes and Elijah Schaffer, I can see that. I'm not a fan of Nick Fuentes, but I don't entirely stand against him. I think his view of a theocracy in America is a little bit out there, and some of his views on women are, I don't want to say misogynistic, but obviously it leans in one direction. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things about Nick Fuentes that I think are just very what's the word? But we'll just say that he's the type of person who is very much the type of guy I can see doing this sort of thing. But anyways, shortly before the interview, though, Murphy, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so when Watson asked him about that history, she claims Murphy began to berate her. Rather than defend her, according to the lawsuit, Schaffer tried to cheer up his guest. Watson began to feel that she had been turned into the designated punching bag for the sexist guests and for Mr. Schaffer himself. The idea behind the show was never that it was to be a forum for the humiliation and abuse of the female co-host, as the male host smirked and egged on his appalling behavior. The complaint reads, in her lawsuit, Watson claims Schaffer was frequently drunk during broadcasts. Now, there are people out there who have backed up this claim that, I've heard people allege that, yes, Elijah Schaffer was drinking on set very frequently. There's been plenty of people who've talked about it on YouTube or whatever platform they are on, where they had been invited to the Blaze and they had seen Elijah drunk, or he was drinking hard liquor. He was talking about being pegged or something like that. It's really not that far out of the realm of belief to think that these things were going on. But I think everybody is getting that at this point, that it more than likely happened, and it shouldn't be written off just because he's conservative. It absolutely shouldn't be written off. And treated that way just because he's conservative and just because people are friends with him. It's a hostile work environment. I think there will be some sort of settlement out of it. Nothing too huge, but yeah. And Sydney Watson is going to have a hard time finding work after this, unless she wants to spend the rest of her life working with Jeremy. I mean, might not be too, but still. Anyways, it did not help. Mr. Schaffer would get drunk on set and get guests drunk as well, the lawsuit reads. He would do shots of hard liquor before many of the shows. It was impossible to work professionally in any environment where her co-host was drunk and impaired. The relationship between the hosts broke down, according to Watson, when Schaffer refused to stop unilaterally booking misogynistic and abusive people on their show. Watson claims Blaze management ignored her many complaints about Schaffer's treatment of her, protecting him as a company star. Their fights regularly spilled into public eye. In April 2022, for example, Schaffer tweeted that he hoped Watson would sleep with Gorka, a married former Trump White House advisor. In the lawsuit, Watson describes herself as devastated by Schaffer's suggestion. Yeah, that's a real shitty thing, you know. Sydney Watson is just this little woman, you know, and Elijah Schaffer's this big rock star who's propped up by the Blaze. They're paying him oodles of money to be a dickhead and say stupid fucking shit. Yeah, I would hold the Blaze accountable for this, not so much Elijah, but I would hold the fucking Blaze accountable for this. And they're having a lot of problems, you know, Steven Crowder. You know, Crowder's, you know, sort of wrangling with Daily Wire at the moment. There's a lot of shit going on. Tim Pool, what he said the other day, people are being like, oh yeah, there's some semblance of this happening. I don't know, something, you know, the major big con companies seem to be having an emotional breakdown, to say the very least. They're no longer active. They're not working, and maybe the Daily Wire is going to be next. I don't know. It's weird. The Blaze suspended their show in May. According to her lawsuit, the company fired Watson in July after a lawyer working for Watson complained again to the company about Schaffer's actions. Still, Schaffer kept criticizing Watson even after their show ending, referencing in their thinly veiled Twitter posts and live stream appearances with other conservative personalities. At a July movie premiere, for example, Watson says that Schaffer made a series of outlandish claims against her to prominent Fox News and InfoWars employees. Okay. Yeah, I mean, just a lot of this too is just because she said it doesn't mean it's true. Absolutely. I don't think that everything in this case is, you know, going to be completely spot on and accurate, or that it really happened. Some of it might be stretched out, some of it might be exaggerated. But I don't think this is this whole Me Too thing. I don't think this whole thing is just a Me Too suit, to say the very least. I think there is probably a lot going into this, and especially if people can vouch for it. There's people all over the place saying that, yes, he would get drunk. There's people all over the internet who've been invited saying, yes, he would get drunk on set. These things have happened. And, you know, there's all these allegations about him sleeping with, you know, cheating on his wife. And I don't know if that's been proven or not. I think it was proven, but it's not necessarily, you know, like illegal. He can't get in trouble for that. But it is a scandal, no less. So this is someone who is, you know, behaving very obnoxiously, to say the very least. And this would create a hostile work environment. Schaffer allegedly told the other media figures that Watson was bent on seeing Schaffer divorce his wife and was blackmailing him about personal indiscretions after trying to seduce him. What? Oh God. Okay, Schaffer. Oh, so yeah. Now it seems like he was accusing her of what she was accusing him of. And that's something a lot of people do. It's like in the book Rules for Radicals, you know, like the radicalization of like politics and things like that, is you accuse your enemy of exactly what you are doing. That's how you just sort of make any accountability towards you obsolete, and you put it all on your enemy and make it seem like they're the one doing it, like, you know, like mainstream media does all the time. Like when the Reichstag burned down, or like if you ever read Animal Farm, when the pig fucking blows up the goddamn windmill and blames it on the other pig. That is how you sort of eradicate any accountability for the things you have done. So absolutely, I know this is dragging on, but this is a long article. I wish it wasn't so long. It was, it's getting to the point of reading a piece of work by Shane Cashman again. Anyways, thank God I didn't have to talk about that today. In her lawsuit, Watson claims management at Blaze Media never took her allegations against Schaffer seriously, only firing him after he allegedly grew up with another employee. So he's actually, she's got the receipts. She has got the receipts. Sydney Watson, by the sounds of it, has her receipts, unlike someone else. The Blaze instead opted to cater to the demands, tantrums, and misbehaviors of younger rising star, a male one who long after Miss Watson had been terminated for complaining and demanding. Okay, so she was fired for complaining and demanding justice. That is retaliation, and I believe in every state. At a federal level, yes, at a federal level, that has punitive consequences towards the employer. And depending on the state, there is punitive consequences against the employer. So at a federal level, you cannot do that. You cannot fire people for complaining about sexual harassment. You cannot. It is called retaliation. And that, I think that right there is what is going to really put the icing on top with this settlement. Because, I mean, she, like I said, she has all her receipts and she was fired for complaining about this. That is retaliation. This happens all the time. Of course, there are cases out there where this sort of thing has happened to the woman and, they don't actually end up winning the lawsuit. That absolutely does happen. But I think, this is more or less going to fall on the Blaze. I don't think Elijah Schaffer is going to take much shame for it. I don't think he's going to have to end up paying much of a settlement because they are the ones who enabled Elijah Schaffer, by the sounds of it. They enabled him. They allowed him to get drunk. They allowed him to do these things on set. They allowed him to misbehave. They allowed him to encourage all of these things being said towards Sydney. It falls on Glenn Beck and the Blaze at the end, because if they did not allow that behavior, Elijah Schaffer wouldn't have been doing it in the first place. So I think this is going to fall on the Blaze, and Glenn Beck might go after Schaffer for one reason or another. I don't know, but that's just what I'm saying. I think the Blaze should ultimately be held accountable for it because they enabled that behavior, and was finally fired based on allegations that he physically assaulted and manhandled at least one other female employee of the Blaze. The complaint reason. And also, if they fired her for that and then he allegedly got fired for doing that to another woman, so now you have, real face value, it actually fucking happened evidence, and this is all going to go to court. This is all documented, I'm sure, and she's going to take it to them. Yeah, I really think they're going to end up paying her a settlement. I don't think much is going to happen to Elijah Schaffer, but I do think they're going to end up paying a settlement. Like I said, I wouldn't so much blame Eliza for this. Yeah, it was shitty what he did. He sounds sort of like a terrible person. I've never met him. I know a lot of people on there are friends with him, content creators, whatever. They've been on the show, but he does sound like, like I said, people who do this sort of thing, they always appear to their friends as the type of people who never do this, or the sweetest, nicest person ever. Oh yeah, they're a little touchy-feely, sure, but that's usually what people say. And yeah, I understand this was mostly in the fault of Elijah, but if he was not enabled to do these things by the Blaze, which they were enabling him to have this sort of crazy rock star behavior, this would have never happened. And the Blaze is going through a lot of shit right now. I mean, it just seems like they can't get things in order. It's complete fucking chaos. Crowder is leaving. They are losing money. I mean, it does sound like they have been very negligent, and it's all coming back to them. And I think this lawsuit, if it goes any further, this is just going to destroy them completely. But yeah, that's my point. My direction on it is, yeah, I know I'll probably get a lot of flack for this, get called like, oh, you something like that for saying these sorts of things. But really, like, when it comes to the conservative right, if there's one thing about them that just bothers me so much, is just, I don't use the word misogynistic. I think it is an overused buzz term. but there is absolutely a demeaning of women, and they all get behind it. I understand when you got like this screaming blue-haired, purple-haired, whatever, short-haired, buzz-cut left girl with a megaphone in at the Capitol screaming, bantering and picketing, you know, wearing their pussy hats and shit like that. Yeah, I get behind that, and I say that's, you know, third wave feminism. It's actually toxic, but, you know, harassing a woman at her fucking job, this is where I stop with the conservatives. I'm just like, dude, this is, you know, one reason why I myself don't identify as conservative. Yeah, I understand the toxic, screaming, snowflake, bantering, picketing sort of feminist who wants to chop your dick off is extremely hostile and something I want to remove from the immediate area as well. But that does not mean I should be enabled to grope the breasts of my coworker. They are people too, you know, and that's the thing, is you have to have empathy. And someone like Elijah Schaffer, absolutely no empathy. I can say he had absolutely no empathy to be able to do those sorts of things. No, none. So that's where I stand on it. Give me all the flack you want. I don't care. But just it was nice to not have to talk about Eliza Blue today, so I'll give it that. But anyways, I'm Astro Catacol. This is the Astrocaster feed. And I will see you next time.